So, think about your smartphone or your laptop for a second. Over time, the operating system gets patched, right? It gets updated, and occasionally it has to undergo a massive, complete system override just to handle new demands. Well, civilization actually works in the exact same way. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore the incredible evolution of Malay ethical governance. We'll be looking at how a society's foundational code evolved from ancient times, underwent some pretty huge updates from foreign powers, and ultimately became the incredibly dynamic hybrid system we see today. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The civilization base code. 2. Malacca as a global hub. 3. The European mindset update. 4. The colonial system override. And 5. The ultimate hybrid civilization. Now, to really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the historical map of the Nusantara, the Malay world. We're zooming all the way back to 10,000 years ago during the pre- and proto-history eras. Then we'll move right along to the 15th century with the legendary Malacca Sultanate, jump into the colonial era between the 18th and 20th centuries, and finally arrive right here in our present-day modern era. It's a timeline that shows exactly how we got to where we are right now. Section 1. The Civilization Base Code. Okay, let's dive into this base code by defining our two most vital puzzle pieces. First up is ethics. You can think of ethics as the moral compass of the mind, the values, the principles, and the integrity that point us toward what's right and what's wrong. Second is civilization. This represents a really high level of social advancement, covering everything from technology and art to complex societal systems. And what's absolutely fascinating here is how these two interact. Without ethics, civilization completely collapses into chaos. But without civilization, ethics simply can't evolve or scale up. Together, they are basically the twin engines driving the dynamics of any nation. And we actually know for a fact that this base code was running successfully a very, very long time ago. Take Perak Man, for instance. This is an 11,000-year-old skeleton. It's literally the oldest, most complete Stone Age skeleton ever found in Southeast Asia. Just pause and think about that massive scale of time for a second. 11,000 years. The discovery of Perak Man is absolute proof that complex early societies and human migrations were happening in this region way, way before any foreign powers ever showed up on the scene. Our ancestors certainly didn't just sit around in caves either. They went through a highly systematic progression. Back in the Paleolithic and Mesolithic eras, sure, the focus was purely on nomadic survival using some pretty basic stone tools. But then, society hit a major level up in the Neolithic and Metal Ages. We're talking farming, livestock, and early trading. That laid the absolute groundwork for proto-history, which brought us the emergence of legendary early powers and regional empires like Funan, Srivijaya, Majapahit, and Kedah Tua. The operating system of civilization was becoming highly complex. Section 2. Malacca, the global hub. Now, if you were somehow dropped into Malacca back in the 15th century, you'd basically be standing in the New York or Dubai of ancient times. It was the ultimate global hub. Ships from all over the world docked there. And spices? They were quite literally treated as the gold of that era. But the real reason Malacca thrived wasn't just its lucky geography. It was their highly efficient four-fold administrative system. That system ensured peace and just immense prosperity. Because it was a world trade center pulling in merchants from across various continents, Malacca became the exact starting point for a beautifully diverse, multicultural Malay civilization. Different cultures, big ideas, and varied ethical systems were all starting to meet and mix in totally unprecedented ways. Section 3. The European Mindset Update. So when European colonial powers, the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the British, finally arrived in the region, it really wasn't just a physical occupation. Yes, of course, they brought forts and cannons and treaty documents, but more importantly, they brought a whole new philosophical package. They introduced an entirely new set of ethics and global ways of thinking that completely challenged the traditional local systems. The contrast between these two mindsets is absolutely striking. The traditional local system operated on what we could call a V1.0 pre-Enlightenment mindset. Here, the focus was heavily rooted in religion, classic philosophy, and personal virtues. Authority was spiritual, and it was heritage-based. But then, the colonial powers brought in a V3.0 post-Enlightenment mindset. This new software update was entirely focused on utilitarianism, judging actions by their broad impact or the happiness they produced for the majority. It introduced social contract theory, rational legal frameworks, and a strict profit-loss dynamic for managing modern society. Suddenly, efficiency and secular law became the new standard. Section 4. The Colonial System Override. Now, here's the crucial point. This wasn't a voluntary download. It was a massive system override. Using complex treaty documents and the British resident system, Western ethics and rational legal laws were forcibly absorbed into the local system. This drastically transformed the traditional political, economic, and social autonomy of the Malay world. Local sovereignty was completely redefined from the ground up. The British were absolute masters of administrative categorization. They basically broke down the region to institutionalize this new secular, rational legal system. If you look at the three tiers, first you had the Strait Settlements, which were direct British colonies with highly centralized direct control. Then you had the federated Malay states, heavily integrated under the resident system, which severely limited local rulers' independent decision-making. And finally, the unfederated Malay states, which maintained a distinct formal relationship and moderate centralization. But let's be real, they were still completely under the colonial administrative umbrella. The traditional OS had been officially overridden.
Section 5. The Ultimate Hybrid Civilization.
As the world kept turning and moved into the modern era, local governance and daily life had to adapt to massive technological shifts. For those of you who still remember them, floppy disks are the perfect symbol for the dawn of this digital shift, that wild moment when information started moving faster than ever before. On a local, day-to-day level, the introduction of things like the electronic cash register completely transformed daily commerce. It reflected a whole new wave of administrative and economic automation. That profit-loss mindset brought in by the colonial era, it was now being digitized and totally streamlined. Even just stepping outside, the evolution was super clear. An older meter taxi is a fantastic visual representation of modernized public services. Local infrastructure was evolving right alongside these massive global industrial shifts, seamlessly blending into the everyday lives of the people. And, this modernization didn't just happen overnight. It followed this steady waves of the industrial revolutions. IR 1.0 in the 18th century brought mechanical tools and steam power. Then, IR 2.0 in the 19th century gave us mass production and electricity. Things really started speeding up with IR 3.0 in the 20th century, bringing automation, IT, and early computers. And today? Well, we find ourselves deeply immersed in IR 4.0, a rapid-fire era of smart production, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and a completely borderless digital world where physical and digital boundaries simply disappear. Through all of these massive changes, the modern Malay world has remained a dynamic, magnetic epicenter. Just like back in the golden days of the Malacca Sultanate, it continues to draw influence from literally all corners of the globe. Eastern philosophies, Western rational legal systems, Middle Eastern spiritual values, and the strong, grounded regional ties of ASEAN. It absorbs everything. This continuous, centuries-long absorption leads us to a concept known in the source material as Peradaban, which essentially translates to a hybrid civilization. I love to think of it as the ultimate rojak, a local term for a deliciously complex mixed salad. It's a completely unique blend of deep local historical roots, Western rational legal ethics, and modern digital globalism. The really big takeaway here is that being truly modern doesn't mean deleting your traditional base code. It means successfully weaving it together with the incredible speed of the global world. And you can literally see this beautiful blend when you walk down the street today. Traditional, heritage-rich wooden shops standing proudly and harmoniously right next to towering, ultra-modern skyscrapers. It is the absolute perfect visual summary of a society that honors its V1.0 roots while operating on the most advanced global framework available. Which leaves us with a massive, fascinating question to consider. We've successfully merged thousands of years of tradition with a global borderless digital framework, but as we sprint headfirst into the age of artificial intelligence, big data, and unseen technological integration, what is the next system update going to look like for this hybrid civilization? How will the ethics of tomorrow patch the systems of today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next deep dive.